Hello and welcome to my first tutorial video. My name's Si, I'm from AS Photographic. This is a little tutorial on a technique known as frequency separation. I was asked by a couple of local photographers to explain how I use this technique. It's mainly used for healing skin imperfections. It can get rid of some quite major issues without looking too artificial, so let's get started. First thing you need is obviously an image of a model. I've got this one here, very pretty girl, very naturally pretty, but we can help nature a little bit. So the first thing you do is duplicate the base layer a couple of times. So now we've got two duplicate layers of it, and the first thing we want to do is rename those layers. So if we name the first one tone and the second one texture, so that we know what they're going to be carrying ultimately. Now we want to turn off the visibility on the texture layer, highlight the tone layer and go into our filters tab and select blur, sub-option Gaussian blur. Now as you can see, it's made the image very blurry, so we want to turn it down a little bit. What we're trying to achieve here is a situation where the image looks soft focused, the skin looks smooth, but you can still make out details such as eyes, nose, mouth, albeit very blurred. I tend to find setting it around 7 pixels tends to be about right, so if we click OK, that should be right. Now if we turn the visibility on the texture layer back up, and you see the image goes sharp again, now what we're going to do is go into the Images tab and select Apply Image. Now the image, ignore it in the background because I'll explain that in a minute. You've got a tab comes up with various options. Now the top half here is about your source, the bottom half is about your target output. Now the source is obviously pulling from the image that we're working on, and we want it to pay attention to the blurred tone layer that we've just made. So in the layer option, set it to tone. We can ignore the channel RGB because that is what we're working anyway, and that's how it's set from default. Now the target obviously is locked to the image we're working on because that's where it's to, and the blending we want is the subtract option with a scale of 2 and an offset of 128. So you click OK and you're presented with this grayscale high pass filter-esque image of the photo. Now what's happened here is basically the texture layer has had anything that matches the tone layer that we created removed. Obviously where the tone layer has a Gaussian blur on it and it's very blurry, the only thing that matches is the base colours, tones and shadows. All the fine details were lost, so we're then left with an image which has no colorific data, but it has very sharp detail still stored, which allows us to edit the two things very separately. So if we go into the texture tab down here and select the option of normal, and then we can change that to linear light, and what that'll do, it will make the image look more natural again and easier to work on. If we highlight the tone layer again and use our lasso tool, we can start to draw around areas of the skin which have discrepancies in tone. We're not looking at details here, we're just looking at general colours. Now if you bring up your filter on Gaussian blur again, I've got a keyboard quick key, so I'll just bring it up. We can now edit it to a much higher level without it actually affecting the details on the image. So I can go to even 20, and as you can see there's still texture there, but the skin takes on a much more balanced tone. So if I go over a couple of areas of the face with this, you'll see what a difference it makes. So let's just do a couple. Another good example is obviously this was shot in a studio, the light's coming in from this direction and it's cast a shadow between her chin and her lip because obviously her lips block the light slightly, so we can highlight that issue here and add blur to that, and it will actually bring that shadow down a little bit and just make the image a little less sort of contrasty. Here you can see there's a shadow cast by this hair follicle here. We can get rid of that using the same technique as well. Now the other way we can edit in this system is if you go into the Textures tab and click on your clone tool, you can actually edit just fine details without touching the colours. This means that it doesn't matter where on the image you pull your clone stamp from as long as it has the correct texture. So for example, there's a little puck mark here on a cheek. If I pull skin from down here that has the correct texture, even though the colour doesn't match, it should actually fix that issue very easily, as you can see. Another example, this scratch on her cheek here, pull from over here and it's gone. And with this system you can also affect changes with the boundary of the eye, where it always ends up that dotty skin which we all can't stand. Then the crow's feet around the eye, they can be removed as well. It makes your editing very quick, very simple, very easy. It's a super powerful way of doing it, and it just allows you to work very quickly. Another example is forehead lines. They can be removed without an obvious sign of editing being there. Single hair follicles can also disappear because they are so fine they are blurred on the Gaussian blur and they sit well and truly in the detail layer. So there you go, there's a few quick edits done. As you can see, her face is already taking on a much more balanced, much more consistent tone and detail level, and with a few minutes more work it would be a very nice, very attractive studio shot. I hope that's been very useful for anyone watching. If you've got any questions, by all means message me, I'll do my best to answer. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.